Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Batch for Books, a life raft in a sea of invoices, a session that was presented at Winter Institute 2025 in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, we're going to get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and welcome to Batch for Books, a life raft in a sea of invoices. Before we get started, I want to make a few announcements and go over a bit of housekeeping. First, the slides and handouts are available. There's a link in the slides. You can get it on the app or on their website. Recordings of the sessions are going to be available on BookWeb and BookEd sometime after Winter Institute. I'm sure ABA will be sending out tons of emails and announcements and book selling this week and all that. If you haven't silenced your cell phone yet, please do so now. We will be taking questions, but they're going to be at the end of the session. I'll remind you then, but something to keep in mind is somebody will be around with a microphone. Please wait for the microphone. They need it for reusability for recording so that makes it easy for them to share the session afterwards. Let's see. Next, remember your handy antitrust guidelines, so no discussions on pricing, boycotts, or dividing up the market. Next, I just want to thank lead sponsor Ingram for their continued sponsorship of Winter Institute, plus all the other publishers who sponsor the event. We wouldn't be able to gather here and do sessions like this without that support. Finally, I want to thank ABA for giving us the opportunity to talk to you all and for putting on another great Winter Institute. So make sure you thank your local ABA staff member the next time you see them. Okay, with all that out of the way, we are going to talk about invoice management. I'm going to start things off, provide an overview of what Batch is, how it works, how stores use it for invoice management. Then I'm going to pass things off to our booksellers over here, and they will be talking about how they use Batch for Books in their stores. And then finally, we will be doing a Q&A at the end. I should do introductions. I forgot to do that. My name's Nathan Halter, and I'm the program manager for Batch for Books here in the U.S. We have our three amazing booksellers who are going to be sharing their expertise today. At the end, Terry Ham, owner of Kindred Stories in Houston, Texas. Stephanie Leach, office manager, book manager, and wearer of many other hats for Weller Bookworks in Salt Lake City, Utah. Adam Wateris, owner of Lost City Books in Washington, D.C. So let's start talking about invoice management. One of the challenges that just about all booksellers face is that you're being inundated with paperwork, hundreds to thousands of invoices and credit notes, and trying to manage them all is just a huge organizational burden, and which has real time spending, payroll eating costs to you and your company. You've all had to develop these intricate processes, workflows to organize and sort your invoices. You want to understand and be up to date with your current liabilities. You want to reconcile your invoices to confirm you're being invoiced only for what's been shipped. Then there's credits. You want to confirm that you've got all of them. And finally, you want to pay your invoices as well. And you need a system that helps you do that. And that's where Batch for Books comes in. Batch is an all-in-one invoice management system developed for independent bookstores to streamline those processes you've put in place and hopefully even make them redundant in some cases. And our goal is to provide a service that fundamentally and permanently shifts that organizational burden I mentioned away from booksellers so that all that's left is the fundamental tasks that you have to do. You don't have to do any more of the paper shuffling. So how does Batch do this? Your vendors are going to, when a store signs up for Batch, your vendors electronically transmit invoices and credits as they raise them in their AR systems. The vendors are shipping invoices and credits on a daily basis, so the information on Batch is always current and up to date. For the most part, you'll be able to see invoices before the shipment arrives at your store. In batch, we have a couple different types of screens and ways that we organize the information. You're going to be able to go in and see lists of your invoices and credits, all the header information, and there's a bunch of different ways to access this. You're going to be able to see the line item detail of an invoice, and this is all the information that you would expect to see on a hard copy of the invoice, except you're able to access it much earlier, and you don't have to worry about organizing and sorting and filing it. And finally, we provide summary screens on batch, and those are organized by due date. So when you log into batch, the first thing that you see is what you owe to the publishers right now. So with the goal is that, instead of you needing to spend time corralling the hundreds and thousands of invoices you receive each year, all of that information is just automatically loaded, sorted, organized, stored, is easily accessible, and importantly, is very, very accurate. In our session today, our booksellers are going to discuss the impact batch has had on the way they handle the organizational aspects of invoice management, the different ways they're able to use batch to make payments, invoice reconciliation, to submit claims, QuickBooks integration and accounting, to help with their workflows. And they're also going to talk about how they implemented batch in their own stores. So if anybody out there is interested in using batch, they're going to tell you, what was easy about it, what was hard about it, things to look out for. Also, I hope you've all heard that Simon & Schuster and Hachette have both recently agreed to come on board, which we are really excited about. Yeah. This will bring the total number of vendors on batch up to 10. So in addition to Simon & Schuster and Hachette, we already have Arcadia, Blackstone, Gardner's US, HarperCollins, Independent Publishers Group, Macmillan, and Penguin Random House. We do plan to add as many more as we can, so this is certainly not a final list. This is an in-progress list. So let's get started with the booksellers, and I can stop talking for a bit. Okay. So as I mentioned, the topics we're going to be discussing today is getting organized, making payments, reconciling invoices, submitting claims, QuickBooks and accounting, and implementing batch. The first topic I want to discuss today is organization. This is sort of a passive benefit for batch in that bookstores aren't actually doing anything to make it happen. You're not uploading or downloading anything. It's just happening in the background for you. But in many ways, it's probably the most important benefit of batch because it allows stores to kind of strip away all of the paper shuffling activities and leaving only the most essential tasks. I want to direct this first question to Terry. Or not question, I just Terry, can you kind of talk about how maybe batch has changed your organization or how it's helped can you talk about that?
Yeah, so can you guys hear me? Yes, okay. So first of all, I'm here to represent all of the really small bookstores with super small teams. Our bookstore has a team of just 3 full-timers, and one of those full-timers just started. So I wear many, many, many hats. I'm head of IT, HR, paper shuffler, all the things. And so I feel prior to me learning about batch and signing on, I was just drowning in invoices just as a new bookstore owner, a new business owner, period, all these different invoices coming. Sometimes there's one book on an invoice, it was just a lot of invoices that I was having to receive, track, check and make sure that I'm getting what I'm paying for, calculating the due date according to the terms that are on that invoice. It might say 30, 60, 120. Sometimes 30 is accurate, sometimes it's not. And so batch just kind of erased all of that work for me. There's no more. And this is just for the publishers that are on batch. Obviously, I have to do this for the other publishers that are not on batch, and we'll talk about that a lot later. But it just really just made everything a lot easier. Everything is on batch, from your invoices to your credits. I know we're going to talk about filing claims on batch and tracking that you've received those claims before you pay the invoice. It's all there. We were, receiving some invoices in the mail, some in a PDF, some we had to go to a portal to download And we use a document organizing software called Devon Think. So I was logging, downloading and transferring those to Devon Think, kind of organizing them by when they were due, tracking to make sure that they were approved to pay. Doing that for so many different little pieces of paper is really cumbersome, and Batch just kind of gave me back so much of that time. So I like to say there was my life before Batch and my life after Batch. And yeah, it's just been really, really great.
Stephanie, would you like to talk a little bit about organization?
Oh, do I? Well, so it operates on multiple levels, both for, projecting your cash flows, because you can look forward, you can, generate reports for future due invoices really easily directly from Batch. So on that level, it really helps with organizing. And just on the receiving level at the beginning, it's super helpful for receivers because they can simply scan the book into Batch and it will pull up the invoice. So you don't have to fuss with a product invoice that maybe might not have accurate discount information. It certainly won't have the invoice number. So in those cases, the receiver has access, like direct and instant access to accurate invoice information. So it helps them keep organized with what invoices go with which boxes, et cetera. So on all levels, Batch has been really helpful. And like Terry said, it consolidates the publishers. So you have one place where you can look at all of the status with all of your publishers. So look at all of your, generate reports for all of your publishers and for your cash flow. So if they were all there, it would be amazing.
Soon enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just echo the same thing. I think the other part that's been changed the organization of it for me as well is that kind of communication between a publisher and yourself. If you're trying to figure out what's going on, if you're sometimes as badly organized as I might be with paperwork, trying to like hunt down like what was that payment for, like exactly. And that's been a huge change for me as well as we're going to talk about later. Reconciling into QuickBooks Online, and like that kind of transformative sort of data entry, doubling up data entry, and like all that kind of stuff changed dramatically for me as well.
Thanks. We're going to move on to payments. So the organization part is we're getting all the information onto Batch, and then stores, they don't have to do that part. But then once a bookstore is in Batch, there are a few things that they're able to do, the functionality of Batch. And the primary way that stores are using Batch is to make payments to the publishers. Stephanie, I was hoping you could start leading us off with the payments, kind of talk about how the process works for you. And yeah, if you want to start off with the payments, that would be great.
Yeah, so payments, I just made a payment yesterday morning for Batch while I was here at the conference. So it's super convenient and easy to access. So all of these processes are connected, so it's hard to separate one from the other. But essentially, so later on in the process, I download a report from QuickBooks. Oh, sorry, I'm comparing my previous. I have kind of a case study in case you are interested between previous Simon in the past, or Simon now, and Simon in the future. So if I maybe can include that in my response here, that would be great. Is that okay?
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we use QuickBooks Online. And so to make a payment for Simon, I download a report from QuickBooks that I created because, as many may know, QuickBooks truncates your remittance. So you don't have the full remittance items included on your payment, on your check if you're cutting checks. So, and then I format the report, and then I cut physical checks, stuff envelopes, and enclose the remittance. So, but Batch does the bulk of that for me because I don't have to generate a report from QuickBooks. I just download it from them, And so what I do is I include, I actually organize them ahead of time. So there's a verify step. So I start with verify. I verify my invoices that I know have been received. And then I go through, and a week before payment cutoff that Nathan communicates to us via email, and with multiple options of payment cutoff dates. And I use the verified batch totals from Batch Online to determine the amount to transfer to Batch via Mailio. So I transfer one amount to Batch via Mailio. That's the process I use. I don't know if most bookstores use that.
I use Mailio too.
Yeah. So one transfer, and then once the payments show active on Batch, I click authorize on all, one click. So, and all the ones that I've verified previously, and then my work's done. And you want to?
I was going to say, if you look at the screen, here's how you can authorize all. And so I'm just authorizing all the HarperCollins invoices. So in Batch, just kind of one, like a how-to kind of thing is on Batch, when you want to make a payment, the first step is you're going to select the invoices you want to pay, and you select the credits you want to use. So stores maintain control over that aspect of their payments. Batch doesn't, remit anything that you haven't authorized. So stores still have control. And as Stephanie alluded to, the first step in your payment process, or one of the steps in the payment process on Batch, is going to be to authorize those invoices and to authorize those credits. And just to let you know, on the table, on the summary table on the screen, when you see an outstanding amount, this is the current period summary. So this is reflecting all your outstanding invoices due by the end of February, plus any outstanding credits that you have. Other than authorizing, you don't have to take any special steps to apply those credits other than authorizing them. Right. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So, and then Batch remits the payments to the publishers and records and reconciles payments in QuickBooks. So I don't need to go back into QuickBooks and mark them as paid. That's all done by Batch. Yeah.
Terry, do you want to?
Yeah, I hate QuickBooks. I don't go in there. So
I'm trying to convince her otherwise.
She is. I need to go in there. That's, next year. But yeah, so we love paying through Batch. I mean, the whole functionality of just, first of all, being able to see what's due. Our bookstore only remits payments once a month at the end of the month, just because it's just easier for me, and the publishers don't have a problem with it. And so our workflow is, once we receive a shipment, I just go ahead and, our team helps with just reconciling. And like Stephanie said, it's hard to separate these different points, but our team reconciles that, we've received it, what's damaged, is there a shortage, is there something on the invoice that we actually have, or on the packing slip that we haven't actually received. And after that, I'll either authorize. So there's a function where you can verify on Batch before you authorize, as Stephanie just shared. I just go straight to authorize. So if we determine that the invoice is good, we've received everything, I just hit authorize. And at the end of the month, everything that's authorized gets paid. And if there's anything outstanding, then, it's on me to look into, why is this not authorized? So it might be because I just missed the invoice and haven't authorized it yet. It might be that there's a credit that I'm waiting for that I haven't received. I do not pay invoices unless I receive the credit for that invoice. And so, oh yeah. Yeah, I don't do that. So it's just easy. It just makes life so much easier. And, as we've been talking about, you're seeing this across publishers. So it's just nice to have one system that works across different publishers, because outside of the world of Batch, it feels like all the publishers have different ways of doing things. And I feel like our team has to have a different workflow for every publisher, depending on how they share an invoice and all that. And so it's really nice.
Adam, can you talk about your payment process a bit? Is it similar to Stephanie and Terry's? Are there things that you do differently?
No, it is fairly similar. So I have a full-time receiver and a part-time receiver, and I get all the paperwork and it piles up, and I end up verifying all the invoices slowly, like go through the month, and then I see everything that's been verified as a way to double check myself, and then I authorize payment for what I've already verified. And if there's an invoice or a credit sitting unverified, I have a fairly simple to-do list of like, okay, I got to figure out what happened to this invoice or to this credit, where did it come from, or anything like that. And then I authorize everything in batch, and I just send payments through my bank, through ACH, and I just do payments for each of my authorized totals to help it keep it straight for me. I don't use a third-party site, but so it's pretty similar.
Yeah, on batch, just a couple notes about payments. So the first step, as we mentioned, is you can authorize all your invoices, and you can do that for all your vendors. And on the summary screen, the table lists your remittance amount for each vendors, and you get a total at the bottom here in this funds still owed field. And stores can send a single payment for all their vendors, like Stephanie and Terry do, or if they want to keep things separate, they can send separate payments for each of the vendors. And batch, it allows that flexibility to do it how you want to do it. Just to let everybody know kind of how our payment schedule to the publishers work. We send payments to the publishers every Friday morning, and also on the last business day of the month. About 70% of our stores probably make one payment a month towards the end, but the other 30% are sending multiple payments, whether for cash flow reasons or just it adds flexibility to their lives. One important part about payments, and I was hoping one of you would like to talk about this a bit, is something I've heard from booksellers is they'll send a payment to the publisher check, and they'll send like their paper statement, and sometimes that payment is not applied correctly, and so that creates bookkeeping headaches. We found, and we've heard from booksellers, that those kind of discrepancies, because of the way we're integrated with publishers, don't happen, because when we send your payments, we're sending a remittance advice with all the individual invoices and credits. Would one of you like to kind of talk about that, if it's applicable to you?
Yeah, sometimes errors happen. Sometimes I could forget to send the full remittance that I've generated from QuickBooks. And so that, absolutely, batch eliminates that opportunity for discrepancy and error, because it is automatically remitted accurately to each invoice.
Yeah, I don't use QuickBooks, so I make my remittances myself. And, sometimes I'm really good about copying and pasting all the correct invoice numbers and the amounts due, but sometimes I make a mistake and that throws off like what's due next month. And there's like this random credit, or there's this random bill that I owe because I, put the decimal in the wrong place. So batch it's all extremely accurate. We have not had any remittance issues when using batch. Yeah,
it's not really a practical response to the question, but I think the one thing I've noticed talking to credit reps, your credit rep, or you got a question about a bill, or they're wondering where payment is or whatever. I have found that being able to say I'm on batch, right, or I'm doing a thing with batch, and like I'll send payment. There's a bit of confidence. There's like a kind of confidence because they know that you can see, like you're seeing the same information, which before, and I'm going through a big problem with one of the publishers now that they didn't apply a bunch of credits. I asked them to apply, and they're not responding to my emails, and it's just how it sometimes goes. And I've not encountered that with the batch publishers because it's all kind of connected. But if there has been a question, where there was a little bit of disconnect or whatever from both of us, it's felt very easy to be like, oh, I'm seeing the same thing, and I'm authorizing the payment now. You'll see it when it gets sent over to you.
That's exactly kind of the information I was looking for. And this kind of alludes to another point that I wanted to make. A lot of you have great relationships with your credit reps that you've built up over the years. Batch is not a replacement for those credit reps. As Adam was saying, we hope that it complements those relationships and augments them. And helps those relationships. So you'll still talk to your credit reps. You'll still talk to the folks at the publishers. This is just we hope it's just a tool that kind of helps you communicate with each other and do so effectively.
If I can just add one thing on the credit rep, and batch is really nice because you do see like your aggregated totals of like what's due. So, maybe if it's the fall and you're heading into like a really busy event season and you're going to be ordering tons of books, I've been able to keep an eye on my credit limit so that I'm not having any issues. Like, maybe I've ordered a bunch of books and I'm actually up against my credit limit, and then there's a delay and nobody's reaching out to say, hey, we're not shipping these books because you're really close to your credit limit. Batch has allowed me to not have that issue as much with the batch publisher, just because I can easily see like, all right, I'm up against my credit limit. Let me make an additional payment so that I'm not having any issues with receiving books that I need in a timely manner.
Nice. Thanks, Terry. Something that I think all three of you have sort of talked about is reconciling invoices, kind of making sure that you're only being invoiced for the items that you receive. Functionality-wise, our authorization and they use this kind of the same process for verifying invoices in the sense of clicking a button. We have these status update buttons in Batch and on the transaction screen. And to verify an invoice, it's just a matter of clicking on the verified button in the V column and then updating it. But that's just like the mechanics of it. And Adam, I was hoping you could start off this conversation about kind of the importance of reconciling invoices and what your process looks like on Batch, and maybe how that compares to, not like vendors who aren't on Batch.
So what I do, like I said, my receiving people receive, and we are pretty strict about having invoices before we receive. So we have discount and totals as accurate as we can get it. And I get the paperwork and I go through and I not only verify that we've got the invoice, but then I double check my receiver's work just with some total reports that we print. I learned receiving, and I learned this stuff from another bookstore that they took it very, very seriously. So I kind of do too, even though we were very small and we've kind of grown. It's been really good to do. And then I can go back and double check that. I think we're going to talk about claims. It's something, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. But part of the process too is we do lots of our claims still through their portals or calling reps. But I don't know how you all feel when I'm doing a lot of this sort of stuff at my desk or jumping down to do something I kind of don't want to have to like make a phone call or figure out who I got to call to do this thing. And I end up kind of doing both things where I fix stuff on Batch by doing claims on Batch, and my staff will call and stuff like that. But I've given my staff my receiver access and their own login to hop on to get invoices from here, so they can make sure to have the right invoice. What was the other part of the question?
Oh, I think you covered a lot about the reconciliation. One thing Adam said about giving other staff access to Batch. One thing I want to mention is we do have different user levels and permission levels in Batch. So we have the general level, the admin level, they can go in and they can do everything. But there's a receiver level, and they can do that verification process. They can search for invoices. And as we'll get to in a bit, they can also make claims through Batch. So you can definitely have other staff members without worrying about them authorizing invoices if you're the one making payments. Stephanie, I know your store, you use the verification option as well. Can you talk about your process?
So my process, I do all the invoice entry, so Batch saves that step, and we'll talk maybe more about that with QuickBooks integration. With previous, with non-Batch publishers, I do the invoice entry and statement reconciliation in one step. I have their printed statement and I'm entering invoices at the same time, so I can just go along with that. And this includes that 20 deep stack of dollar range co-op credits from certain publishers. From Simon, have you ever encountered this stack of co-op credits? So, and of course we have to pay attention to the actual invoice date and the invoice number, hope it's not a product invoice, and pay attention to terms that may change from invoice to invoice. And this step takes hours, of course. So with batch, that's all done for me. And let's see, where am I? Yeah, it's all organized already. And so the process of reconciliation is clicking verify rather than doing five fields of data into QuickBooks.
Thanks, Stephanie. Terry, I know you skip the verification step, so to speak. You instead of verifying during your reconciliation process, you just authorize the invoices. Do you? We didn't talk about this before, so sorry for putting you on the spot.
It's okay. I'm an open book.
Do you authorize your invoices, as you receive them? That's what I thought, so I'm glad.
Yeah, I go into batch once a week and authorize everything that's been received for the week prior. So how it works at our store is super small. So when boxes come in, everybody drops everything that they're doing and we all start receiving together. And we reconcile on the packing slip that comes in the box. And then I collect those packing slips and our team checks off every single line to make sure that they received this book. If something came damaged, we have a system for indicating that it was damaged. If something is not there, they can't find it, we have a system for that. And I collect those slips and then I go into batch and I compare it to the invoices that match up with those slips. So once I determine that, yes, everything's received. And we also don't have a bookstore POS system. We use Shopify, which I love. And so I also have that record of receiving, because I create a purchase order in Shopify when I am ordering. There's a purchase order so that I know what I've actually ordered. Our team gets the box. We accept the purchase order in Shopify, and then we also check it off on the actual packing slip that we receive. And then I go into batch and kind of reconcile. And then once I determine that, okay, we received everything, nothing's on the invoice that isn't on the packing slip, vice versa, I just authorize. So I just find, I could verify and then go back and authorize. I just feel like I did the work to make sure that it's good to go. So I just go ahead and authorize.
And speaking to Terry's point a bit, stores can go in and authorize whenever they want. And even if they're not planning to pay for those invoices and send payment for, they might authorize in the beginning of the month, but they're planning for an end of the month payment. And that's fine. You can authorize as early as you want. And something that I've heard from some bookstores, like Adam, Stephanie, and Terry, they verify in batches, basically. Like they'll save up for a week or something, or whenever they get the chance, and they'll go through and verify or authorize them. Some stores, one option that some stores do that I've heard is they verify at the point of receipt. So a store will receive the item into their POS, immediately go into batch, immediately compare that packing list to the amount on batch and kind of verify, as they come in. And both methods, I think, are effective. And something that I don't know if any of you can comment on this or if this is applicable, but something that I've also heard from some booksellers is that because it helps communication between various people in the store, departments, in that the person receiving, they go and verify, and then the person who's paying the bills, they go in and they just see the verified invoices, and they don't have to do any further reconciliation, and they can just authorize them. I know for a lot of stores, the receiver and the person paying the bills is the exact same person. But has there been any kind of communication benefits from being on batch and people being able to kind of see the same information?
I was just talking about this with another bookstore, and like I said, receivers have access to batch, but they're not verifying yet because it just kind of, I feel like I'm happy. It's fine for me to do it, but recently I was like, I don't know that I need to do this anymore. And like I said, I check their receiving totals against the invoice totals, and that's just kind of how I've always done it, to have a second set of eyes on what's happened. But now I'm getting to a point where I don't need to, I kind of feel like I almost don't need to do that anymore. So I think it will become a function that I might have the receivers start doing, but I haven't tried yet. I haven't done it yet.
Nice, thanks. The next topic I'd like to talk about, and I'm going to start with Terry here, is, and everybody, I think we've all mentioned it and said how in a bit, is making claims for damages and shortages through batch. Terry, can you kind of walk us through that and what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so I try to use batch for everything that I can. So that includes making claims through batch. And the nice thing is, well, it depends on the publisher. So right now I use batch for Penguin, Harper, and Macmillan. For Harper and Macmillan, I can submit a claim through batch. For Penguin, you can, but it directs you to the Penguin portal to file your claim, which is fine because Penguin is the best, and you get that credit immediately once you submit. If it's under a certain amount. But it's just nice because it then creates a tracking system for that claim that is not in my email. Which I really, really love. There's some times when I'm getting ready to submit my payment to batch at the end of the month, and I notice that there are some invoices that are not ready, they're not authorized, and it's usually because there's a credit that I'm waiting for, and there's a claim number that's now attached to that credit, and to the claim. There's a claim number attached to the claim, and I can just copy and paste that and send that to my credit rep and say like, hey, I need to pay this invoice. It's due this month. And I can't pay it unless I have this credit. And that kind of like pushes them to make sure that they send me a credit and get that remedied. So, we just, on that packing slip that I see, we also have some internal systems that we use to deal with damages for various reasons. So we have like a Google sheet that's tracking like all of our damages, just because I also need to track like, hey guys, we can donate this book at this point, but we don't donate books until we've actually received the credit, because sometimes publishers want the books back. Sometimes they allow you to donate or destroy, they say. So we do use a Google Sheet to track that. It just makes the whole tracking of what you've sent in a claim for very easy. It's there. There's a record of it. And there's that claim number that you can use to just check in on where that credit is. And then the credit also appears in batch. So once you receive the credit, it's in batch, and batch has this really nice functionality where there's an advanced search page and you can put in an invoice number. You can see everything that has happened associated with that invoice. So you'll see the invoice number, you'll see the claim number, then you'll see the credit, and then you can authorize all, and then you're done. So it's really nice.
Thanks, Terry. Adam, I know you make claims through batch. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I guess Nathan's got it up here. Like I said, I do it in a way that's like it helps my workflow because it doesn't take me away from the page, because I'm just like, I've just got something in front of me. But I was also mentioning, training, having staff do some of this stuff, and I'm going to have them start using this as well, because it streamlines it. But the same way, as Terry mentioned, I hop on and make the claim, and you were on a page previous to this where it showed the claim, and where it's just like the line items, and it becomes just very simple. I don't know.
Thanks, Adam. Stephanie, claims?
So we've had a streamlined system in process in-house for a long time. So interestingly enough, there was once a person whose part-time position was exclusively devoted to submitting damage claims to publishers. I've been working for the bookstore for 24 years, by the way. I forgot to say that in my introduction, or I guess I'd never introduced myself. Which is a quarter of the bookstore's history of 95 years, which is crazy. I'm like, yeah. Okay. We have a system for that. So I haven't opted to move over to batch for that aspect yet.
And just things I like to point out is batch is flexible with your workflow. We want you to be able to use it how you want to use it if it works for your workflows. And we know there are pieces that are going to work for some stores, and there are pieces that don't fit into your workflow, or you might have a system that you really, really like and, not ready to make the switch to batch. Like Weller Bookworks, Stephanie's store has, already a great claim system, so they don't necessarily need to use the claims process through batch. Very little on batch is, required. It's a tool. You can use it how you see fit. And we think it's like flexible in that way. We want it to fit. We want to meet you kind of where you're at. Does anybody have anything to add more about claims? Oh, I guess just in terms of how to submit a claim on batch, kind of the functionality. You find the invoice you're looking for. On the right-hand side of the screen, we have this little claim option. And you don't have to go through a big list of invoices to find your specific invoices. You can just search for your specific invoice. And
you can also search by ISBN, which is really nice.
Thank you. That's important to know. And all you do is you select the reason for a claim for a book. You would set the quantity. You validate it to get a summary of it. And then you hit the Create Claim button. And what that does, as we saw, it creates this claim record that you see on your transaction screen and can use to track. And it obviously sends your information to the publishers so they can process your claim, and your credit notes usually appear on batch within a couple of days. So it's a pretty quick turnaround from the publishers to get that credit. The next thing that I would like to discuss is QuickBooks and accounting. One misconception that I do want to clear up about QuickBooks is that it is not required to use QuickBooks to be on batch. So if you don't use QuickBooks, and I know some people have thought it's like a prerequisite to use batch and required. The QuickBooks integration is an optional thing that you can use. And if you do use QuickBooks, I think, as you'll hear, it can make your life a lot easier. Lost my train of thought. But I was going to say that if you don't use QuickBooks, there's still ways that you can use batch to make your accounting life a little bit easier as well. Talking QuickBooks, I want to turn it over to Stephanie.
Okay. So I've been entering invoices for more than 20 years. And yeah, I actually enjoy it. And that's why I've been doing it for so long. But you know what? I'm kind of over it now. I'd like to devote my time to generating really interesting reports for the bookstore and analyzing data and stuff like that. I'm kind of on all levels of it. I love data entry and I love analyzing data. But yeah, we can eliminate the hours spent in data entry by integrating with QuickBooks. It's super easy, and I think also I'm a bit of a control freak and maybe a little resistant to change. And I think that those things are, true for a lot of folks actually. But like Nathan mentioned, you have control. Batch doesn't determine where these things go in your chart of accounts. You tell Batch where to post invoices to your chart of accounts. So with the QuickBooks integration, Batch just uploads the invoices to QuickBooks automatically. So no data entry. And you can always go back into QuickBooks and edit them. Say there's something tailored that you need to, little addendum that you need to add to an invoice. So you're reconciling invoices. You're not entering them. Yeah. So I think that's it, right?
I think so.
And then also, batch integration has, with the payments that we already discussed, that's all part of the QuickBooks integration for us.
I know I'm up here talking about batch. It's probably one of the single best things for me, because I hated entering invoices. Mm-hmm. And I think I didn't use it for a bit, and then I got set up on it, and I was like, it's almost like cheating. It feels like, and I remember, and it does, and I've not encountered any problems. It does work really well.
Right. Seamless.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Stephanie. Terry hasn't hopped on the QuickBooks train yet, but
nope, not yet. But I'll get there.
And batch helps compensate for QuickBooks Online failures.
And just to let you know, we do have an integration. I know most people these days use QuickBooks Online, and that Intuit is pushing people towards the online version, but we also have an integration available with desktop as well. So it performs the same functionality. We also have an integration with Xero. So if you happen to use Xero, we can help you out there. One thing I wanted to mention about the QuickBook integration is that aside from, entering the invoices and the credits, when you make a payment through Batch, we also send a bill payment update that creates separate bill payments for each of your vendors and marks all your invoices as paid and credits as used. Yeah. So even if you sent us one giant payment covering all your vendors, when we send that bill payment update to QuickBooks, we show you exactly how much went to each vendor. So you don't have to do that like publisher reconciliation. The information's there, and it's pretty clear. So that covers kind of the batch functionality. Before we move on to kind of how you all implemented batch, is there anything that you want to add about the functionality stuff that we discussed? You can say no. I just wanted to make sure
I'll be interested with the Q&A at the end to see what we missed.
Cool.
I just want to reiterate that I love Batch, and y'all should all sign up. It's free for us.
Thanks.
That's
it's
huge.
free.
It's a free service that has just added so much value to my business and the way that I get to spend my time. So, you can sign up and play with it and not, use it. Nathan is also great. The support that I've received from Batch. I'm not sure if we'll talk about this or if I'm moving too far ahead, but there's a training that you'll attend. And even if you walk away from that training, I don't know what they just said, Nathan is very, very responsive and really quickly to any questions that you might have as you're starting out.
Thank you. Adam, I want to start with you. Getting onto Batch, we think it's a simple tool and it's simple to use, but you are changing your workflows. It's something different. So there's always going to be kind of a learning curve. And Adam, I was hoping you could kind of discuss that learning curve a bit, talk about kind of, I guess, the implementation process for you and how you started to transition your workflows to using Batch.
We talked about how we collect invoices or receiving, however you all do it, and then verifying. So kind of getting myself into what I end up almost inevitably always just doing it once a month because that's just how my brain works. I'll have just a huge pile of stuff to just go through. And so I think part of the training process and onboarding process for me was just kind of getting that rhythm of changing how I do it and figuring out the reports to print and what you feel comfortable in terms of record keeping for yourself that's not necessarily online. And I what did we do? So basically my workflow went from working off statements and going through somewhat manually collecting invoices and setting up my payment to, like I said, verifying and double checking the work is almost the bulk of what I do. And then I get everything authorized, schedule my payments, and I kind of don't look at it again until I'm reconciling the full month on QuickBooks. And I transfer payments because the way my QuickBooks is set up, and that's kind of it. It's fairly simple at this point.
Nice. And were there? I know when we talked before, one of the obstacles was the payment timing, and I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that too.
And I don't know how everyone else feels about this, but sometimes I'm kind of calendar challenged, and so I'll kind of just have a hard time understanding that next week is a date that's important, and so that was a challenge for me, realizing that I couldn't just be like, oh, I need to send that payment to PRH right now. It's like, oh no, you should have done that a couple days ago. So that is one thing that I had to get used to, and it took a little bit. Where you do have to schedule your payments to give time for the remittance date, and like that. That was one obstacle for me, and I think it's mostly because I'm just not really good at planning.
I will say that's something that I see from a lot of stores, for their first month on Batch. And just a little bit of context about the payment timing is when a store makes a payment, they transfer funds to us, and they mostly do it via ACH. And as you all know, ACH isn't immediate. It usually takes a couple business days. So kind of planning, building in those business day buffers so we get it in time to be able to send it to the publishers by month end yeah, and for most stores, what I find is like the timing thing is, a problem for like maybe a month, maybe 2 payments. But then after that, they have their workflow in place. They have their system and they know what to expect. I want to go to Stephanie. How was the implementation process for your store?
Well, it was super easy. I mean, staff training, just getting receivers on the receiving level, access level to that. And I mean, it's a godsend for them because they're not hunting for invoices or packing lists that might not be useful to them in any case. And actually, the change in workflow, it has affected the way that my workflow for other publishers that don't happen to be batch publishers. It's increased my own efficiency from the way that I handle my workflows with others. So, and obstacles to implementation, there was a little bit of awkwardness the first month, maybe with the payment timing. But Nathan's emails where he sends the cutoff dates are super helpful. So I can just, build that little cushion in and make sure I have that money transferred over before the dates that he's posted and provided for us. So, yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Before we move on to Q&A, Terry, do you have anything you want to talk about, like how the implementation worked for you?
Yeah, so because my bookstore is fairly new, we've only been open for 4 years, and I started using Batch about 2 years ago, I want to say. I was still in the process of even creating my SOPs for paying invoices, and it was a hot mess before Batch. So Batch really, just the system that I had to get with by using Batch helped me to create better systems for my publishers that I have to pay outside of Batch. So I kind of replicate what I do with Batch. I have to replicate what Batch does for me with the other publishers. I have to collect those invoices, organize them. Like I said, I use a system called Devon Think where I can make a note on the PDF that says like, hey, we received it, or if we're waiting for credits. And once I get that credit, I go in and I put approve. So my implementation was really great because it forced me to get organized about how I was doing this for all the different publishers. And I did miss my first month. Speaking to the obstacles, my first payment was late. So I think that happens to a lot of people. And like Stephanie mentioned, Nathan does I think you send more than one email a month, just reminding us like, this is the date we need to receive your funds in order to remit by either the end of whatever week or the end of the month. And I know Stephanie and I use Melio to initiate our ACH transfers. And Melio is really helpful because Melio will tell you, well, if you need to get it here on this date, this is when you need to initiate this payment. So I haven't been late since.
You've been
That's
awesome.
great.
You've been awesome.
It's been great.
Before we get into the Q&A, one reminder, and I'll say this at the end, fill out your surveys.
Yay.
ABA needs them. And we want you to say good things about us too, so hopefully. Let's if you have a question, Preeti in the back is going to be walking around with a microphone. Please wait for the microphone because so that they can get clear audio recordings for, disseminating all this great information and your wonderful questions.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first is, do we know how Simon and Hachette will handle claims once they're fully integrated into Batch?
We expect them to handle claims like HarperCollins and Macmillan and all the other vendors. Penguin Random House happens to just be a special case for the claims process.
Okay, cool. And my other question was, mostly for Terry, how do you handle receiving packages that don't have packing slips and your process for authorizing?
So usually when a package comes, we use a purchase order number system, and usually on the label of the package, even if there's not a packing slip, there is a purchase order number on the shipping label. So when I'm training my team, I'm like, because sometimes your order might arrive in several different boxes, and one of those boxes has the packing slip, and maybe it's still on the UPS truck. So we really like live and die by that purchase order number that's on our shipping labels if there's not a packing slip in the box. And as I mentioned, when I submit an order, I create a purchase order in our POS system in Shopify. So then we go from that, getting that purchase order number, to going into Shopify and looking up that purchase order number, and that's how we receive. So.
Hi, I absolutely love Batch. I'm definitely in the cult. And I honestly, whenever
you're
someone
here for the
says
vibes.
like, we don't use it, I'm like, why would you ever not? I mean, I'm really big into efficiency, and not using it, I feel, is so inefficient that I can't really communicate with them. My question, besides all, like, I will praise you later, but my question is, and there's a little asterisk, and I really have been super busy and haven't really taken the time to look into this so much. But co-op credits, because I'm trying to think, we use co-op solutions, and I think, is it like Macmillan? Like, you still have to, like, back when we did the whole check thing, I think, like, we would have to, like, say, oh, we're using our co-op credit because they didn't automatically create, like, credits like Hachette does, where it's like, okay, this is your co-op solution, you know. And so, and I think, what is it? It's like Arcadia, I think you still have to do that for. And again, I've been really busy and haven't kept up on my co-op credits. But anyway, so I was just wondering, like, and I think I've talked to you, Nathan, multiple times, great customer service, by the way, about, like, I just don't know how we can, for these publishers that are still insistent, like Scholastic, like how you have to instigate that co-op credit opposed to Hachette, who just does it for you. Like, how can we do that with Batch? Is my question, because I think I'm losing out on a bunch of my co-op credits that I haven't had the time to look into. Sorry.
Well, we can't instigate we can, if the publisher raises a co-op credit, it will appear on Batch. But we haven't really done anything with instigating co-op credits. It's an interesting idea, and maybe there is a way that Batch could somehow do that. I'm not quite sure. Like, that's something that we would have to give some thought to, and like maybe there is a mechanism in place that would do that, but we don't have like a instigating co-op tool in place right now. Oh, no.
Thanks. I have two questions. If you make a claim and they are sending a call tag, does that come through Batch, or is that just going to come separately?
That'll come separately. If a publisher wants to send a call tag, they'll reach out to you directly about the claim, and you'll arrange the call tag there.
And then my next question is, we tend to pay by statements. Mm-hmm. So do the statements come through Batch and we can still pay that way, or do we have to go through each individual invoice?
So the statements don't come through Batch. Your statement will never match what's on Batch for a very specific reason. Publisher will issue a statement at the end of the month, but if you're going to Batch like on the 15th of the month, you know, any credit note that you got between the 1st and the 15th isn't on the statement, but is on Batch, and you can use it. And so, yeah, we don't have the statements on Batch. Kind of almost the statement view on Batch is that current period summary that shows what's outstanding. But because for the credit reasons that I mentioned, it won't quite match the amounts on your statement.
But Batch is essentially generating a statement for you. I mean, that display is a statement, and you can generate reports for future statement periods, which is really awesome because you don't get future statement. I mean, you get aging reports on your statements, and you can generate those things with Batch directly.
Yeah, I feel like Batch is almost like a more accurate statement because those credits that you're receiving in real time are reflected like instantly. So I feel like when something, when you get a credit, a PDF statement from a publisher at the end of the month, by the 10th, there's more things that have happened that can apply. So batch is catching all of that for you.
And so just to add on, something you can do, like we have search functionality. So you could run a search for, all invoices and credits issued through the end of the month. And you can authorize based on that so that your authorized amounts that you're remitting to the publisher do match what's on your statement, and leaving those credits or other invoices that came in since the statement was issued for later payment or later use. So we're just about at the end. Does anybody have any other questions? We have time for about one more, I think. Okay.
Who's all on batch?
Wow. Who's gonna sign up for batch?
Yeah, that's what we succeeded.
So, I want to thank everybody for coming and spending your time with us today. I know there's a lot of great options out there, so to come here and listen to us is amazing. And I also want to thank the booksellers, Adam, Terry, and Stephanie. They were awesome, and yes, can we just please clap for them? Just to let you know, we will have a booth in the vendor showcase if you want to stop by and talk with us. We have some one-on-one appointments available still, I think, and I would say just stop by our booth in the vendor showcase, and we can get you all sorted. If you're like, oh, I just want to sign up, just one thing. If you go to batchforbooks.com, upper right corner, contact us or register. You fill out your store information, and then I send you out a user agreement, and that gets the ball rolling. And and we'll get you on batch. Mm-hmm. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, ABA.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!